All right, welcome to the final chapter of Survey of Calculus. We're going to look at some more applications of derivatives and integrals. And in this first section, the first application we're going to look at is an economics application. So here in this example, we see we have a demand curve and a supply curve. They want us to find the equilibrium points, the consumer surplus, and the producer surplus. So before I show you the math on how to do that, let me first start by explaining what all of this means. If you take a microeconomics class, you'll learn that in the market, you'll have a supply curve and a demand curve. The demand is what people are willing to pay for a product, and the supply is how much businesses are willing to produce of that product. Those things are controlled by quantity, which is put on the x-axis, and price, which is put on the y-axis. And there's a point where they intersect, which is called the equilibrium point right here, where the supply and demand curve have the equilibrium point. So if there's more suppliers than there are people willing to pay, then the supply will decrease. Vice versa, if more people are demanding a product and there's not enough of it, more suppliers will enter the market, and so eventually you'll gravitate towards this equilibrium point. This is the quantity and price that we say clears the market, so that the most number of people are happy and the most number of businesses are happy. How happy are they? Well, that's what the surplus is. So if you draw a line like this, what you see is this is the consumer surplus and this is the producer surplus, the area of these two triangles. These are people who would be willing to pay a lot more, and so they view it as they're saving money, so they're very happy. So this is kind of a measure of happiness. This person would have been willing to pay it at this price, however the price is down here, so that person is this happy. I add it all up, it's called consumer surplus. On the other hand, you have producer surplus, which is this business would have been willing to produce the whatever it is. This business would have been willing to produce it at this price and quantity, but because the price is up here, this business is making more money. So this business is happy, and so this is called the producer surplus. You can see that basically the way we're going to calculate this is by just subtracting the quantity times the price. And that's how we're going to end up either subtracting it from the demand curve to get the consumer surplus, or doing the quantity times price, subtracting the producer surplus to get the producer surplus. The supply curve to get the producer surplus. All right, so hopefully that explanation makes a little bit of sense. I just covered an entire semester of microeconomics in 2 minutes. Just kidding. There's a little bit more to it than that, but that's the basic idea of supply and demand, and the market. So let's go ahead and see how we would do it in this problem. So I left off an X on the notes, but there should be an X right here. You see our demand curve has a negative slope, as we're used to, and the supply curve has a positive slope, as we're used to. So the first thing to do is to find the equilibrium point, and that is as easy as just setting the two equations equal to each other. Okay, so you just set the two equations equal to each other, and that will give us the equilibrium point. So if I move the 1 over, and add the 3/4 x, we should find our equilibrium point. Goodbye, goodbye. So that's going to be 15 on the left is equal to 1/2 plus 3/4. Well, 1/2 is equal to 2/4. So that's going to be 5/4 x, like that. Times by 4 is 60, so 60 equals 5x, which means that x equals 12. So x here is quantity. So the quantity coordinate is 12. And I can plug that into either equation and figure out what the price is going to be. So let's just plug it into the supply one because it's easier. 12 times 1/2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. So that means y equals 7, or p, the price, is equal to 7. So the coordinate is 12, 7, which is that coordinate right there. And what this means is that 12 items will be produced at a price of 7 per item. Okay, and so that's the equilibrium point done. Now we'll find the consumer surplus, and you can see how we're going to find that by just doing price times quantity, which will be this box right here. And so we'll do the area of the demand curve minus the price times quantity box to get the consumer surplus. So it's really just that straightforward. So the number that are produced is 12. That's our Q, our quantity. And so we'll do the integral of the demand curve. And now I put the dx there because that signifies that the integral is closed now, minus the 12 times 7, which is the quantity times the price. So that's not part of the integral. We're just doing the integral of the demand curve minus this QP box will give us the CS, the consumer surplus. So that's going to be negative 3/4 x squared over 2, right? So if you take the derivative of this, the 2 would come down, cancel that 2, and we'd get negative 3/4 x plus 16x. That would evaluate from 0 to 12, and then that'll be minus 12 times 7, which I believe is 84, but I better check just in case. Yes, 84. So hopefully by now you're used to doing these integrals. If you have a question on how I did it, let me know. Now we just evaluate the integral. So that's going to be negative 3/8 times 12 squared plus 16 times 12. And what's nice about this, that's me plugging in the 12. What's nice about this is if I plug in a 0 and a 0, that's just going to be minus 0 minus 0. And then we have minus 84. And that's it. So let's do this. 144 divided by 8. A times 3. So we got negative 54 plus 16 times 12 is 192 minus 84. So negative 54 plus 192 minus 84 is equal to $54. So there you go. That's the amount of positive net benefit to all of the consumers. The consumer who lives right here doesn't, like, it's kind of a wash because they paid the $7 and the product was worth $7 to them, so that was a wash. This person who's willing to pay $9 got a $2 consumer surplus. So what's amazing about this is all of this will just activate so long as the market exists, which means free information. People are informed consumers, they know what the products are, and as long as that's okay and there's rule of law, you don't need governments to try to find this point. Many governments have tried, and it turns out that if you just let the market do its thing, not only will the price and quantity find their natural resting place, but they can also adjust to changes in the environment and things like that. So, and when I say environment, I mean business environment. And so anyway, I encourage you to take microeconomics. It's a great class. $54 is the consumer surplus. Now let's see how much the businesses are benefiting from this. And so to do that, we take the box minus the area. So here's the PQ box again. We take this box minus the area underneath the supply curve to find this producer surplus triangle. So in this case, it's going to be 12 times, oops, so I lose my pen, 12 times 7 minus the integral from 0 to 12 of the supply curve, which you'll remember was 1/2 x plus 1 dx. So that's going to give us the producer surplus. So that's going to be 84 minus the integral of this is going to be, careful with your brackets here, 1/4 x squared plus x evaluated from 12 to 0. And notice how I put that whole thing in parentheses because we'll need to apply this minus sign to everything. All right, let's do that. So 84 minus, that's going to be 144 divided by 4, which is 36, plus 12 minus 0 minus 0. And that's evaluating it. Oops, sorry, I'll make my parentheses look the same. And so it's going to be 84 minus 48, which is also equal to, well, which is equal to $36. And that's the answer. So that's how you would find the producer and the consumer surplus in this example. Hopefully that makes sense. If it does not, please give me an email, send an email to me, and in the next video we'll do a second example.